The planet Viridian shone like a green jewel in the endless black of space. Towering forests stretched across its continents, rivers sparkled under twin suns, and the cities of the Zalari, the alien race who ruled this world, shimmered like glass and metal. Among them lived Princess Lyrael, the young heir to the throne known for her sharp mind and gentle heart. Yet despite her royal privileges, she felt a strange emptiness. Lyrael often wandered to the palace observatory at night. From there she could watch the stars, the planets, and the tiny dots of human ships moving in the nearby system. Humans were new to this part of the galaxy. Their ships were smaller and simpler than the Zalari's elegant vessels, but they moved with confidence and purpose. Lyrael had heard stories of human courage, of how they could survive harsh worlds and strange creatures. She longed to meet one. One quiet night, as the twin moons bathed the observatory in silver light, a human ship suddenly appeared in the sky. It moved awkwardly, too fast to be a patrol craft, too slow to be a warship. It seemed lost. Lyrael's heart raced. Humans were not supposed to visit this close to Viridian. Her curiosity burned. She descended the winding steps from the observatory to the hidden launch bay, her thoughts racing. On the surface of Viridian, the human ship landed with a soft hum. Smoke rose from the engine vents and small sparks flickered along its hull. Commander Kale, the human in charge, emerged. He was tall, with short dark hair, clear eyes, and an expression of calm determination. His uniform was simple but functional. He scanned the surroundings, noting the alien flora and the towering palace in the distance. Kyle did not expect anyone to approach. But Lyrael had already crept closer, hidden among the tall ferns. She watched him carefully, fascinated by the way he moved and the confidence in his posture. Finally, she stepped forward, revealing herself. "Who are you?" Her voice was soft but carried authority. Kale turned, surprised. "I am Commander Kale, my ship. It had a problem. I did not mean to land here. I come in peace." Lyrael studied him. He seemed honest. "A human," she whispered almost to herself. "I have watched your kind from the stars. You are brave. You are different." Kale nodded. "We try to survive, to learn, and to explore. We do not always succeed, but we try." Something in his words touched her. Lyrael stepped closer. "I am Lyrael. I am the princess of this planet." Kale's eyes widened slightly. "I did not know. I mean, no disrespect." "I know," Lyrael said softly. She studied him for a long moment, then asked a question that had been haunting her. "Why do you not touch me?" Kale froze. He blinked, not understanding. "Excuse me? Why do you keep your distance?" Lyrael asked, her voice trembling. "On my world, touch is a sign of trust, of care, and yet you do not touch me even when you stand so close." Kale thought carefully before answering. "On Earth, touching someone is not always simple. It can mean many things. It can be a greeting, a sign of trust, or something else entirely. I do not know if you would want it. I do not want to cause offense or confusion." Lyrael's brow furrowed. I do not understand. I am curious about humans. I want to learn. But your distance, it feels like sadness or fear." Kyle shook his head gently. "It is not fear. It is respect. Trust is earned, not given freely. I cannot touch you without your understanding." That would be wrong. The princess's heart sank. She had imagined humans as open and brave, and yet this human's caution made her feel distant. She turned slightly, trying to hide the sadness in her eyes. Kale noticed her movement. He stepped closer, though still careful. "I will stay with you. I will explain if you want. You will see why humans act this way. Perhaps then you will understand." Lyrael studied him. His voice was calm, reassuring. She nodded slowly, though a shadow of doubt lingered in her heart. "Very well," she whispered. "Show me. Teach me." The next hours passed in quiet conversation. Lyrael asked about Earth, about human families, about courage, about friendship. Kale answered patiently, explaining how humans express care, how they respect boundaries, and how touch is meaningful only when shared willingly. Lyrael listened, fascinated. Humans were not only brave, she realized, but careful, deliberate. They did not rush. They did not assume. Everything had a purpose, and in that purpose there was beauty. At one point, Kale showed her a small holographic device. It projected images of human children playing, humans helping one another, and families hugging. "This is how we show trust and care," Kale explained. Lyriel's eyes widened. She had never seen such gestures up close. On Viridian, physical contact was rare. Only those deeply bonded family or partners touched. And yet here was a culture where touch could build trust, not demand it. I see, she whispered. It is different. But beautiful. Kale smiled faintly. Yes, but it is only meaningful when the other person wants it. Consent matters. Respect matters. That is why I have not touched you. Not yet. Lyriel nodded slowly, though her heart ached. She had hoped for immediate closeness, for the human to reach out and take her hand. Instead, she felt the weight of patience, of waiting. And in that waiting, a strange hope began to grow. Hours passed. The twin moons of Viridian moved across the sky. Lyriel and Kale walked along the palace gardens, their conversation flowing naturally. She showed him plants that glowed faintly in the dark, flowers that opened only at night, and streams that sparkled with minerals. Kale was amazed, but he also noticed the careful way Lyriel studied him, as if she wanted to understand not only his words, but his thoughts, his intentions, his soul. Finally, Lyriel stopped by a small pond. The water reflected the moons, the stars, and the human ship in the distance. She looked at Kale, her sadness faint but visible. Do humans always take so long to understand each other? She asked softly. Kale considered this. Sometimes, he said quietly, but understanding is worth the time. Rushing leads to mistakes. Waiting builds trust. And trust is stronger than speed. The princess nodded. She looked at him, feeling a strange mix of admiration and longing. I want to trust you, she whispered. I want to understand. Kyle's gaze softened. And you will, in time. I promise. For a long moment, silence fell. The wind rustled the leaves, the pond reflected the moons, and the human and the princess stood together, yet apart. Lyriel felt a strange comfort. Though her heart ached for closeness, she understood that Kale's distance was not rejection, it was respect. That night, Lyriel returned to her chambers. She could not sleep. She thought about Kale, about humans, about trust and patience. She touched the edge of her balcony, feeling the cool metal against her fingers, and whispered to herself, perhaps, one day I will understand. Meanwhile, Kale returned to his ship. He checked the engines, the life support, and the communication systems. He was a soldier, a scout, a stranger in a foreign world. But he had met someone remarkable tonight. The princess was intelligent, curious, and brave. He had promised to help her understand humans, and he intended to keep that promise. Outside, Viridian's forests glowed in the moonlight. The stars shone distant and silent, but for the first time the distance between two very different beings, one human, one alien, felt like the beginning of something new, something patient, something extraordinary. And somewhere deep in the palace, Lyriel whispered again, almost to herself, Why don't you touch me, human? Not in accusation, but in longing. Kale, in his ship, thought of the same question. And for the first time, he smiled, not with fear, not with hesitation, but with the quiet understanding that trust would be built. Slowly, patiently, they would learn each other's worlds. And perhaps, one day, that question would have an answer. The stars above Viridian kept shining as if watching, waiting, and blessing the beginning of a bond that could change both worlds forever. The days on Viridian passed slowly, yet each day seemed full of new discoveries. Princess Lyriel could not forget the human Kyle who had landed on her planet unexpectedly. His calm demeanor, his quiet bravery, and the way he had answered her question about touch lingered in her mind like a soft echo. She wanted to understand him more. She wanted to understand humans. Kale's ship had been repaired enough to function, but he remained on Viridian. The palace staff were unaware of his presence. Only the princess knew. Each morning, Lyriel would visit the hidden launch bay where he waited, often sitting beside him on a bench overlooking the dense green forests. Why is trust so important for humans? Lyriel asked one morning, tilting her head as sunlight touched her hair. Kale considered her question. Trust allows humans to act together, he explained. We are not the strongest or fastest species, but when we trust each other, we can survive harsh worlds, strange creatures, and difficult challenges. Without trust, survival is difficult. Lyriel frowned slightly. On my world, trust is shown through rules, by duty, by keeping promises. You use touch and words. That seems different, Kale nodded. Yes, humans have many ways to show trust. Words are important, yes, but actions are stronger. Helping someone, protecting someone, being honest. These actions show trust more than rules. The princess listened carefully, trying to understand. She had always felt the weight of her duties, the weight of the crown she would inherit. Duty and rules had always guided her life, but Kale's words made her wonder if there was more. If trust, patience, and understanding could be just as powerful as rules. "Will you show me?" Lyrael asked quietly. "Will you show me how humans show trust?" Kale smiled gently. "I will. But you must be patient. Trust is not given at once. It grows, slowly." Over the next few days, Kale taught Lyrael about human customs. He showed her how humans greet each other, how they share responsibilities, and how they protect those they care for. Lyrael learned that humans rarely acted without purpose. Even simple gestures had meaning. A touch on the shoulder, a hand offered, a shared glance, all expressed thought and care. Lyrael tried to mimic these gestures awkwardly at first. She reached out to touch Kale's arm, then hesitated and withdrew. I do not know if this is right," she whispered, her face flushing. Kale shook his head kindly. "You must not force yourself. Only touch when you feel it is natural. That is how humans respect each other. Consent matters," the princess nodded. Slowly, she began to understand. On Viridian, touch was a private thing given only to family or mates. But humans could use touch to communicate respect, trust, and care without meaning more than the moment required. One afternoon, Kale took Lyrael to the human ship. She had only seen it from afar, but now she could step inside. The interior was cramped but orderly, with instruments blinking, buttons glowing, and screens displaying strange worlds. Lyrael's eyes widened as she examined the ship. This is remarkable," she said, her voice filled with awe. "How do you control all of this?" Kale chuckled softly. "It is not difficult. It requires practice, understanding, and patience. You must know each part and trust each part. Machines are like people. They respond to care." Lyrael ran her fingers over the smooth metal surfaces, feeling the warmth of the controls beneath her hands. She imagined the humans who had built this ship, traveling across the stars, facing dangers, learning from mistakes, and yet continuing. She felt a new admiration for the human spirit. I think I am beginning to understand," Lyrael said. "Humans, you do not rush. You think, you plan, you act carefully. You respect others," Kyle nodded. "Yes, and that is why trust is slow. Because it is earned. Because it must be respected. If you do not understand or act too quickly, it can be harmful, even with good intentions." For Lyrael, it was a lesson that touched her deeply. She had always acted with duty, but now she realized that understanding, patience, and care could be even more powerful than duty alone. As the days passed, Kale also shared stories of human bravery. He spoke of explorers who faced deadly planets, scientists who risked their lives for knowledge, and ordinary humans who acted courageously in their everyday lives. Lyrael listened, enraptured. She began to see that humans were more than their ships or their weapons. They were clever, persistent, and capable of great kindness and great courage. "You make humans sound almost magical," she said one evening as the twin moons reflected on the palace fountains. Kale shook his head. "We are not magical. We are ordinary beings trying to survive, but our will, our determination, it can seem magical to others." "Even to you, Princess," Lyrael smiled softly. "Perhaps it is this magic I felt when I saw you. Even before I understood your customs, I felt something. Curiosity, respect, fascination. Something I cannot explain." Kale looked at her calmly. "That is natural. Curiosity is the first step to understanding. Respect and patience will follow. And in time, trust." The princess's heart ached with longing. She wanted to reach out, to touch him, to feel the bond he spoke of, but she remembered Kale's words. Trust is slow, it is earned, and it cannot be forced. She took a deep breath and nodded. She would wait. She would learn, but even as she learned, danger loomed nearby. A rival faction within Viridian's political circles had begun to notice her secret excursions. They whispered about the princess meeting a human, claiming it was dishonorable, claiming it could be dangerous. Lyrael knew she had to be careful, but she did not want to hide her curiosity or her desire to understand humans. One evening, Kale and Lyrael were walking along a cliff that overlooked a vast valley of glowing plants. The colors of the valley shifted with the wind, illuminating their faces in soft shades of blue and green. Do humans always face danger when exploring? Lyrael asked, her voice trembling slightly. Kale nodded. Often, it is part of life. But danger teaches lessons. It shows who you are. It shows who you can trust. It tests patience and bravery. The princess's eyes shone. Then, I wish to face danger with you. I want to learn not only your customs, but your courage. I want to see humanity through your eyes. Kale smiled faintly. If you truly wish, you will need to prepare. Human courage is not reckless. It is careful, deliberate. You must be ready. Lyrael nodded, her heart beating fast. I am ready. I want to understand everything. I want to trust. I want to learn from you. As the moons rose high in the sky, Lyrael and Kale sat in silence looking at the stars. Though their worlds were different, though their cultures and experiences were miles apart, a bond began to form. A bond of curiosity, respect, and patience. And somewhere deep in her chest, the question she had asked that first night returned, not with sadness, but with hope. Why don't you touch me, human? She whispered again, almost to herself. Kyle heard her words, though he did not answer immediately. Instead, he reached slowly and offered her a small gesture, a light touch of his hand near hers, not on her skin, just close enough that she could feel his presence. It was careful, respectful, and deliberate. Lyrael's eyes widened. She felt a warmth she had never felt before. Not just from the touch, but from the meaning behind it. Trust, respect, patience, and perhaps, in time, something more. For the first time, she began to understand humans, not just their customs, not just their bravery, but the heart behind it. The human heart, capable of respect, care, and courage beyond measure. And as they sat together side by side on the cliff, both Lyrael and Kale understood that this was only the beginning. A journey of learning, of trust, and of understanding lay ahead, one that could change both their lives and perhaps even their worlds. The twin moons of Viridian reflected on the valley below, casting long shadows across the cliff. The stars above shone brightly, silent witnesses to the bond forming between two beings from completely different worlds. Lyrael felt her heart lighten. Though she had begun with sadness, with confusion, she now felt hope. Hope that one day she would understand humans fully, and perhaps one day she would finally understand why the human did not touch her. But for now she would wait, learn, and grow, because she had realized something important. Trust and understanding were more powerful than haste, and patience could build a connection stronger than anything she had ever known. And somewhere deep inside, she knew that her life and the life of this human would never be the same again. The days on Viridian had grown warmer, and the twin suns cast long golden beams across the palace gardens. Princess Lyrael spent her mornings walking with Kale, learning more about humans, their customs, and the meaning behind their actions. She felt a quiet excitement each time she saw him. She wanted to understand everything about his world, his people, and himself. Yet not everything was as calm as the palace gardens. In the shadows of the royal city, whispers spread among those who resented the princess's curiosity. Some of Lyrael's advisors and distant relatives viewed her fascination with humans as a threat to the throne. She spends too much time with a human, they muttered. She forgets her duty. She risks the honor of the crown. One evening, Kale and Lyrael walked along the cliffs overlooking the northern forests. The wind carried the faint scent of glowing flowers, and the valley below shimmered in the silver light of the moons. Lyrael spoke softly. I feel that humans are more careful than we expected. Even their mistakes are measured. Kyle nodded. Humans must be. The galaxy is vast and we are a fragile species. Bravery without care often ends in failure. Lyrael smiled faintly. I wish I could learn more not only about your courage but your wisdom. Kale looked at her, his eyes steady. Then we will. But you must also understand that your curiosity brings attention. Sometimes dangerous attention. The princess frowned, sensing a shadow of warning in his words. What do you mean? Kale's expression grew serious. Some on your planet do not approve of our meetings, and there may be those who wish to use your bond with me for their own advantage. Lyrael's heart skipped. She had feared political intrigue before, but never imagined it could reach her private life. Then we must be careful, she whispered. Kyle nodded. Yes, careful but prepared. A few nights later, the danger became real. While Lyrael and Kale explored a hidden canyon near the palace, they sensed movement in the shadows. Strange figures, cloaked and armed, emerged from the darkness. These were not wild creatures or thieves, they were human-size, fast and skilled. They had come to capture the princess using her fascination with the human as leverage. Kale moved first. He stepped in front of Lyrael, his stance calm but ready. "Stay behind me," he said quietly. "Do not panic. Trust me." Lyrael's eyes widened, but she obeyed. Though fear gripped her heart, she had begun to understand humans' way of bravery. It was not reckless. It was precise, calculated, and protective. The attackers advanced, their weapons glowing faintly in the moonlight. Kale analyzed their movements, predicting their actions. "They are skilled but not familiar with human tactics," he whispered. "Follow my lead." Together, Kale and Lyrael moved swiftly. Kale used his knowledge of the terrain to guide them, while Lyrael applied her understanding of the environment. She leapt over rocks, ducked under low branches, and moved quietly beside him. For the first time, she realized that bravery was not about charging blindly. It was about using your mind, your body, and your instincts together. One attacker lunged toward Lyrael, thinking to grab her. Kale reacted instantly. He twisted, intercepted the hand, and pushed the assailant back. Lyrael's pulse raced. She had expected humans to be strong, but seeing Kale in action, so quick, so careful, filled her with awe. "You are incredible," she whispered, running beside him. Kale did not answer. His focus remained on protecting her. "Watch your surroundings," he said calmly. "Use what you have learned." As they moved deeper into the canyon, the attackers followed. Lyrael remembered the lessons Kale had taught her: patience, observation, and understanding the environment. She spotted loose rocks and vines. With Kyle's guidance, she used the vines to swing across a small chasm, then dislodged rocks that created a barrier behind them. Kale glanced at her, eyes wide with approval. "You are learning quickly," he said. "Humans adapt, but so do you." The attackers hesitated, frustrated by their target's skill and the terrain's challenges. Kale seized the moment. He led Lyrael to a narrow cave hidden behind a waterfall, a sanctuary he had discovered earlier while exploring the planet. Inside, the sound of rushing water masked their presence, and the attackers could not follow. Lyrael sank to the cave floor, breathing heavily. Her hands were trembling, but she felt a strange sense of pride. She had faced danger and survived, not just because Kale protected her, but because she had acted with thought and skill. Kale knelt beside her. "You did well," he said softly. "Bravery is not only about strength. It is about thinking, observing, and acting when necessary. You showed all of it." Lyrael looked at him, her eyes shining. I never thought I could be brave." "Not like this," Kale shook his head. "You were always capable. You only needed guidance. Trust yourself, and remember what you have learned. Humans are not the only ones capable of courage. You have it too." The princess's heart swelled. She had always believed courage was reserved for rulers, soldiers, or heroes in stories. But now she understood that courage could be learned, and that even she, an alien princess bound by duty, could act bravely when it mattered. Hours passed in the cave. The storm outside had grown stronger, but the sound of the waterfall brought a strange calm. Lyrael and Kale sat together, catching their breath and reflecting on what had just occurred. "Why, did you not panic?" Lyrael asked quietly. "Why did you act so calmly?" Kale looked at her, his expression steady. "Humans face danger often. We prepare, we train, and we anticipate. Panic wastes time and energy. Calm allows action. It is not absence of fear, it is control over it." Lyrael nodded slowly. "I see, calm. Control and understanding. That is your bravery." Kale smiled faintly. "Yes, and now you have seen it too. You understand it not only with your mind, but with your heart." The princess felt a warmth she had never felt before. It was not the warmth of touch, but the warmth of understanding, of admiration, of connection. For the first time, she realized that trust and bravery could form bonds deeper than mere rules or words. Night fell, and the attackers had vanished. Kale and Lyrael emerged from the cave, careful but unafraid. The moonlight reflected on their path, and the world seemed quieter, safer yet alive with potential. "You have changed," Kale said softly, "not just because of what we faced tonight, but because you have begun to see humans differently. Not as strangers, not as something to fear, but as beings capable of courage, care, and understanding." Lyrael's eyes shone with emotion. "Yes, I feel that now. I feel something I cannot explain." Kyle nodded. "That is normal. Humans and Zalari are different, but our actions, our hearts, They can connect in ways words cannot fully explain. That connection is trust, and trust is the beginning of understanding. Liriel's gaze softened. She remembered the first night, the first question she had asked him. "Why don't you touch me, human?" She realized that the answer was slowly revealing itself. Touch was not merely physical, it was trust, patience, and respect. And tonight, she had felt that trust in every action Kale had taken to protect her. For the first time, sadness did not fill her heart. Instead, she felt a spark of hope. The human she had feared would remain distant had shown her that bravery and understanding could speak louder than words, louder than any touch. As they returned to the palace side by side, Liriel realized something important. Courage could be learned, but trust had to be earned. And in Kale she saw both. The stars above Viridian glittered silently, witnessing the bond that had grown stronger through danger and action. The twin moons reflected on the palace towers, casting long, soft shadows. Somewhere between the moonlight and the stars, the princess understood that her life, and perhaps the life of the human, was entering a new chapter. One filled with trust, understanding, and a bravery that would carry them through the challenges to come. And deep inside, Liriel whispered once more, not with sadness this time, but with quiet anticipation. Perhaps, one day I will understand everything, including why humans act the way they do. Perhaps, one day I will finally know why you do not touch me. Kyle, walking beside her, felt a strange certainty. This bond, born of patience, learning, and shared danger, was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast, challenges awaited, but they would face them together, not as stranger and princess, not as human and alien, but as beings who had begun to trust each other. The night on Viridian stretched endlessly, full of possibility. The palace on Viridian was quiet in the early morning light. Princess Liriel walked along the upper balcony, her thoughts heavy. The events of the canyon had changed her. She had faced danger with Kale, and she had learned what bravery truly meant. Yet now a new weight pressed on her heart. Rumors of her closeness with the human had spread through the palace. Some of her advisors were angry, whispering that she had abandoned her duty. "She is too distracted," one counselor muttered. "Her fascination with the human threatens the kingdom." Liriel clenched her hands on the balcony railing. She had always respected her advisors, but now she wondered if following rules blindly was truly the right path. She thought of Kale, the human who had taught her patience, trust, and careful courage. He had shown her that understanding came before action, that respect must come before closeness. Her thoughts were interrupted by a quiet voice behind her. "Princess." She turned to see Kale, his expression calm but serious. "You must be careful," he said softly. "There are those who do not approve. You cannot trust everyone, even in your palace." Liriel nodded. "I know, but I cannot simply ignore curiosity or fear. I want to learn. I want to understand humans, and I trust you." Kyle studied her for a long moment. "Then we must be careful together. Your trust is valuable. I will not waste it." For a while they walked in silence, the soft hum of the palace gardens around them. Liriel felt a mixture of relief and anxiety. She trusted Kale, yet she also feared the consequences of their growing bond. That afternoon, news arrived that tested her resolve. A group of palace guards intercepted a small team attempting to spy on the princess's movements. The rival faction was growing bolder. They wanted to discredit her, perhaps even harm the human she had befriended. Liriel met Kale in a secluded hall, urgency in her voice. "They know more than we thought. We cannot stay here openly. But leaving might cause suspicion." Kale nodded, his mind already calculating possibilities. "We must move carefully. There is a safe route through the northern corridors, unused and unguarded. From there we can continue your lessons away from prying eyes." Liriel felt a thrill of fear and excitement. She had never experienced such danger before, yet she also felt alive. Humans, she realized, approached risk with thought and courage. They did not panic. They acted with purpose, and she wanted to act with them. As they moved through the quiet corridors, Liriel spoke softly. "Kale, why do humans always seem so calm in danger?" Kale glanced at her. "Because we learn to control fear, not ignore it. Fear is natural. It tells us to prepare. Calm tells us how to act. Humans do not let fear decide for them. We choose our actions carefully." Liriel nodded slowly, absorbing every word. She realized that this was more than survival. It was a philosophy, A way to live that balanced caution with courage. Suddenly, a shadow moved ahead. One of the rival faction's agents had discovered their path. Kale reacted instantly, grabbing Lyrael and pulling her into the shadow of a doorway. The agent passed without noticing them. "You are learning quickly," Kyle whispered, releasing her hand but keeping close. "You saw him, didn't you?" Lyrael nodded. "Yes, I understand now. Patience, observation, careful action. That is human courage." Kale smiled faintly. "Exactly. And you showed courage too, not only by acting but by learning." The princess felt a warmth spread through her chest. It was more than pride. It was connection. She understood now that bravery and trust were entwined, that understanding each other was a bond deeper than mere words or actions. Later, they reached a hidden balcony overlooking a quiet valley. Lyrael leaned against the railing, looking at the glowing trees below. "Kyle, I have something I must confess," she said softly, her voice trembling. Kale turned to her. "What is it?" I feel something for you. Something I cannot fully explain. And yet I fear it is wrong. My advisors would not understand, my people. They would question me." Kyle approached slowly, careful to respect her space. "Lyrael, feelings are not wrong. They are natural. What matters is how we act on them. Trust, patience, and respect guide us. That is how humans, and perhaps others, build bonds that last." The princess looked at him, her eyes shining. She wanted to reach out, to close the distance, yet she remembered the lessons Kale had taught her. Touch was not only desire, it was trust, respect, and timing. She took a deep breath. "Then I will wait. I will trust. I want to understand you fully. I want to learn what it means. To connect." Kale nodded, his expression softening. "That is all I ask. Trust is not given lightly. You have already shown courage and understanding. The rest will come in time." As they spoke, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed faintly. Kale's eyes narrowed. "We are not alone," he whispered. "They may have followed us." Lyrael's heart raced. She had faced danger before, but now it was closer, more personal. The rival faction was determined, and they would not give up easily. Kale led her quickly to a small hidden room, one of many secret passages known only to palace staff long forgotten. The room was dark, but it offered safety for now. He closed the door quietly behind them. Lyrael's voice trembled slightly. "Kyle, what if they find us?" Kale placed a steadying hand near hers, not touching, just close enough that she felt his presence. "Then we act together. You have learned much, and I have taught you more. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is action despite it." The princess nodded, drawing strength from his words. She realized that human courage was not about recklessness, it was about understanding, planning, and protecting those you care for. And tonight she would stand beside Kale, not as a princess alone, but as someone who had begun to trust fully. Hours passed in tense silence. Lyrael studied Kale as he checked their surroundings, analyzed the security, and prepared for any intrusion. She admired his calm, his precision, and his unwavering focus. She had never seen such a combination of mind and heart. Finally, the footsteps faded. The rival faction had not discovered them. Relief washed over Lyrael. She sank to the floor, exhausted but exhilarated. Kale sat beside her, still alert but relaxed. "You are learning," he said quietly. "Not only about humans, but about yourself. Courage, trust, and understanding, they are within you too." Lyrael looked at him, her chest swelling with emotion. I feel it. I feel something I cannot fully describe. And I know now. I trust you completely." Kale's eyes softened. He reached slowly, resting his hand lightly near hers again, careful and deliberate. Lyrael felt the warmth, the intention, the unspoken bond of respect and care. It was more than touch. It was understanding. For the first time, sadness did not linger in her heart. Instead, she felt hope, trust, and anticipation. The human she had feared to reach for had shown her that connection was built on patience, bravery, and respect. The night on Viridian stretched endlessly outside, filled with silver moonlight and the soft hum of distant wildlife. Lyrael and Kale sat together side by side, not touching, yet closer than either had ever been to another being. Lyrael whispered softly, almost to herself, "Perhaps, one day I will understand everything. Perhaps, one day I will finally know why you do not touch me." Kale looked at her, eyes steady and calm. "And when the time comes, you will understand." And perhaps then the bond we have built will grow even stronger. For now they waited. They learned. They trusted. And the galaxy, vast and silent, seemed to pause with them, acknowledging the beginning of a connection that could change both worlds. The princess knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, perhaps more danger, perhaps more lessons. But she also knew this. Trust and understanding were more powerful than fear. And with Kale by her side, she was ready to face whatever the future held. The stars above Viridian shone bright, watching over them, witnessing the moment when two very different beings began to understand each other in a way that would shape their lives forever. The morning on Viridian arrived quietly, with the twin suns casting golden light over the palace towers. Princess Lyrael awoke with a sense of anticipation and determination. After days of learning, of facing danger, and of understanding human courage, she felt that something had shifted inside her. She was no longer simply a princess bound by rules. She was someone beginning to see the value of trust, patience, and connection. Kyle, the human who had changed her perspective, waited outside the palace in the launch bay. His ship was ready, but he had delayed departure, choosing to spend a few more hours with her. His calm presence always brought her reassurance, a sense of stability in a world that sometimes seemed uncertain. "Good morning, Princess," Kale said as she approached, his voice steady yet carrying warmth. "Good morning, Kale," Lyrael replied softly. "Are you ready?" Kale glanced at the ship, then back at her. "Yes, but first we need to talk. What we have learned, what we have faced. It matters more than the lessons themselves. It is about how we act, how we trust, and how we connect. Today you will see the full meaning of what we have discussed." Lyrael's heart beat faster. She had been waiting for this moment, a moment of understanding that went beyond words. "I am ready," she whispered. Together, they stepped onto the ship. Lyrael marveled at the controls, the screens displaying the outside world and the lights that seemed to hum with life. But she was not distracted. She was focused on Kale, on what he would teach her next. "We will begin with trust," Kale said. He gestured toward a platform near the ship's open bay. "Stand here," Lyrael did as he asked. Her pulse quickened. She felt the wind from the ship's engines, smelled the faint scent of fuel, and heard the hum of technology. Kyle stepped close yet did not touch her. "Close your eyes," he instructed. She hesitated for a brief moment, then obeyed. "Why?" she asked softly. "Because trust is not only about seeing, it is about feeling, understanding and believing that the other will protect you," Kyle explained. Lyrael closed her eyes, heart racing. She felt the ship rise slightly, a vibration beneath her feet, and Kale's presence close, calm, and steady. The trust he had shown her in the canyon, the patience he had exercised, all came together now. She felt a strange warmth, not from physical contact, but from the bond they had built. "Now," Kyle whispered, "step forward when you are ready." Lyrael opened her eyes. Before her, the platform extended over a deep canyon, shimmering with the golden light of Viridian's twin suns. She felt fear, yes, but also courage, the courage Kale had taught her. She stepped forward carefully, one foot in front of the other, trusting not only the platform but the human guiding her. Halfway across, the platform trembled slightly, and Lyrael felt a rush of panic. But Kale's voice remained calm. "Steady, trust yourself. Trust me. You can do this." She took a deep breath and moved forward, feeling her confidence grow with every step. When she reached the other side safely, relief and pride washed over her. She had faced fear and acted with thought and bravery. She had learned the essence of human courage. Kyle approached her, standing beside her for the first time without the barrier of distance. Lyrael looked at him, her chest pounding, her eyes shining. I understand now," she whispered. "Courage is not about fearlessness, it is about action, patience, and trust." Kyle smiled faintly. "Exactly. And trust. Trust is what builds connection. Without trust, action is meaningless." Lyrael's gaze softened. She remembered the first night, the question that had haunted her. "Why don't you touch me, human?" Now she began to understand. Touch was not a simple act, it was a symbol of trust, earned and respected. For the first time, she felt ready to bridge the gap. She reached slowly, placing her hand lightly near Kale's. Not on him, but close enough that he could feel the intent, the bond, and the connection. Kale glanced at her, eyes calm and approving, and extended his hand as well, matching her gesture. Their hands hovered near each other, a space of respect and trust between them. Lyrael felt a surge of warmth, understanding, and anticipation. The human had not rushed, had not forced closeness, yet had guided her to this moment. She realized that true connection was more powerful than any impulsive act. It was deliberate, patient, and mutual. I understand now, she whispered again, her voice trembling with emotion. I trust you, Kale, completely. Kale's eyes softened. And I trust you, Lyrael. That trust, that bond, is stronger than anything we have faced. For a moment, silence fell. The twin suns of Viridian cast long shadows over the platform, the winds of the canyon whispering around them. And in that silence, the connection between human and princess solidified, a bond built on understanding, patience, courage, and trust. Suddenly, a warning signal blared from the ship. Kale's eyes narrowed. We are not alone, he said calmly. The rival faction has tracked us. They may attempt to interfere again. Lyrael's pulse quickened. What do we do? She asked, though she no longer felt fear, only readiness. Kale glanced at her. We act together. You have learned human courage. Now we will test it. The ship descended to a safe clearing, and the rival faction appeared, attempting to block their path. Kale moved with precision, guiding Lyrael to positions where she could act with him safely. She used the skills Kyle had taught her: observation, patience, and careful action. Together, they avoided the attackers, using the environment and their combined intelligence to outmaneuver them. For the first time, Lyrael realized that courage was not solitary. It was shared. Bravery multiplied when trust connected two beings, and understanding guided their actions. Kale's teachings were now alive in her, and she moved not with fear, but with confidence and determination. Finally, the rival faction retreated, realizing they could not succeed against a human and a Zalari working in harmony. Lyrael and Kale stood together side by side, their bond stronger than ever. Kale looked at her, his expression soft. You have learned well, Lyrael. Not only human courage, but the essence of trust and connection. You are ready. The princess smiled, feeling a sense of completion and peace. I understand everything now. Courage, trust, patience, connection. And why you did not touch me before. It was not distance. It was respect. It was teaching me the true meaning of trust. Kyle nodded, placing his hand lightly over hers, this time fully connecting. Lyrael felt a warmth unlike any before, a bond that was deliberate, mutual, and profound. The question that had haunted her for so long, "Why don't you touch me, human?" was answered not with words, but with understanding, patience, and the strength of trust. For a long moment they stood there, hand in hand, gazing at the twin suns of Viridian. The princess realized that her life had changed forever. She had faced danger, learned human courage, and discovered the meaning of trust and connection. Kale had shown her that bravery was not about power alone, but about patience, understanding, and respect. The galaxy seemed to pause around them, silent and vast, acknowledging the bond that had been forged. Two beings from entirely different worlds had come together, not through impulse, not through desire alone, but through trust, courage, and deliberate connection. Lyrael whispered softly, almost to herself, "Thank you, Kale, for teaching me, for trusting me, for everything." Kale's eyes softened. "And thank you, Lyrael, for learning, for courage, for trusting me." The twin suns dipped lower on the horizon, bathing the platform in gold and silver light. Princess and human, Zalari and Earthborn, stood together hand in hand, their bond a testament to what patience, trust, and understanding could create. And in that moment, Lyrael realized that the galaxy was no longer so vast and distant. Connections could span worlds. Courage could be shared. Trust could overcome fear. And love, deliberate, patient, and respectful, could bloom between even the most different of beings. The palace on Viridian watched silently, the stars above twinkling like witnesses. A human and a princess had discovered something rare and extraordinary. That patience, courage, and understanding could bridge the gap between worlds, creating a bond that nothing could break. And for the first time, the question that had haunted Lyrael was no longer a question, but an answer. Trust, respect, patience, and understanding had led to connection. And in that connection, she felt hope, courage, and love. The galaxy stretched endlessly beyond Viridian, but in that moment it felt smaller, warmer, and full of possibility. Princess Lyriel and Commander Kale stood hand in hand, ready to face the future together, their hearts connected across worlds, bound by the lessons they had learned and the trust they had earned.